can see you guys there somehow. Hello.
Hello, hello. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. I am Loic, founder of Music Expo, and I'm your host for a few minutes today. Welcome, everyone. I see that we have a few people dialing in from around the world. You know the drill. Please drop either one or where the city and the country you are watching us to say hello. I wanted to kick this off with the three people on the screen, Piper and Dan. Hey guys, how are you doing?
Hey, Loic, how's it going?
Great, great. So we're excited about this. We're going to meet every month and talk about stupid audio questions.
That's right. And
That's right.
I just posted one last hey, we're starting now. So if you are out there and you're not seeing your friend anywhere, make sure you tell them to get over here.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can share the link. Make sure the link somewhere here. There's a share link, and feel free to share. And I see some people saying hello. All right,
Hi.
Ithaca, New York, Atlanta, Rochester. This is amazing. Thank you, guys. We have a bit of a delay. By the time you type, we see it later, but it's great to see it here. Santiago from Colombia. This is an old friend, Anna from San Diego. Well, I won't take much time, but I wanted to officially welcome a new team member at Music Expo. We're very, very excited, and you can see her at the top somewhere. No, the other one here. Maybe she's here. Carmen, how are you?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
Great. I love you. You have a sick setup in the back, ready to go.
Oh yeah, completely my setup, 100%.
Right. So Carmen is join us this week. Actually, she will be running the live stream moving forward, so you don't have to hear or see me ever again. So I wanted to share a couple of things with everybody. Here, this is how we do it. And actually, this is like the last slide I wanted to share. So I wanted to welcome everybody while you dial in. I wanted, as I mentioned earlier in the call or in the live stream, Piper and Dan will come back. We had a terrific session that was almost 3 hours long back in October last year. And we discussed with them about doing this on a regular basis. And every month, the first day of every month, they will come back and answer some of the questions that have been asked anonymously, and it will tell you more about it. So they will return, mark your calendar, March 4th at 6 p.m. the same time. So if your question is not answered this time, or if you have new questions within the next 30 days, feel free to share them, and we will share the link where to do that. But yeah, they will be back every first Thursday, and we're very excited. And next week, we're also kicking off a new monthly series with our friend Frank Socorro. He will join us with a guest, and we will do a free mix critic. So you will get, I think we can drop the link we will drop the link to sign up. By signing up, we'll basically get the instructions to submit your mix. But yeah, submit your mix by February 10, and some of them will be we'll receive feedback live during the live stream next week. And same thing, Frank will join us every second Thursday of every month to do a free mix critic. So this is an opportunity. I know we've heard a lot of requests on this, so we're bringing this up. And then finally, if you may have received, you all have received the invitation via email to join us for the live stream today. And there's also a link to join our Discord. Once we're done with the session, we're going to all head to the community hangout on the Music Expo Discord to have a networking event, to chat for a couple of minutes. So feel free to join us once we wrap up. We leave YouTube and we all go to Discord and join the community hangout. So get ready with a drink and also with your camera and your microphone, and we'll see you there. And without further ado, I'll go back to our panelists and actually Carmen, I will let you do the thing in the back, but thank you. Great to have you. Piper, Dan, great to have you back. This is exciting.
Thanks, Loic. Thanks for making
Yeah.
it the regular thing. It's so cool. Sad that we can't be together in person, but this is kind of the next best thing, I think. This is I don't know how many times now I've presented on behalf of Music Expo, but thank you for always being open to all of my weird ideas, Loic, for presentations for Music Expo. And thank you to my co-host, Dan, over here. Dan Bacigulapi is my fellow mastering engineer over at Infrasonic Sound, Infrasonic Mastering here in Nashville. And I'll let him introduce himself. But I'm just like really, really, really stoked that we're going to do this as a regular thing now every first Thursday of the month. It's going to morph a little bit, I think, and it's going to change a little, but our idea is that you're going to see us for sure every first Thursday of the month at 6 p.m. Pacific. And then once in a while, we're going to have to bring in an expert, because there are some things that Dan and I, believe it or not, there are a few things that Dan and I don't know. And who better to hear it from an expert on a certain subject. And so we'll try and coagulate those specific questions that are in a theme and make sure we bring on an expert to talk to you. But I want to give Dan a chance to say hello and let them know who you are and a little bit about your background.
And I'm going to put you, my job is done. I'm out. I'm going to let you're the two running the show. So Dan, I don't mean to leave you on this, but I want to make sure you have half of the screen. So
No problem. Thanks, Loic.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm Dan Bacigulapi, and I also work at Infrasonic Mastering with Piper. We both work here out of Nashville, and I've been mastering now for, like 13 years, which is a little scary, but also pretty exciting. So I'm super stoked. I've always really liked talking about audio and helping people try and get better at it, and also try and gain as much as I can too from these discussions. A lot of times, good questions make you realize what you don't know. So I'm really stoked for that. So.
Yeah, well, thanks for trusting me on all of this when we first got started, Dan. I can't think of a better person, more knowledgeable in all things audio, or better looking to join me in this project.
I won't argue with the first one, but I don't know about the second.
And thank you to everybody that's tuning in here. I am not much of a host, but I have a couple of like super quick remarks and things that I want to make sure that we hit on, so that kind of where we're at and why we started this. Dan is a longtime mastering engineer, as am I. We're both educators. We both love talking about audio, and we both love, more than anything, dispelling myths about bullshit audio topics. And so there are a lot of things, there's a lot of misinformation on the internet about some audio stuff. There's a lot of things that I actually learned and noticed as an audio professor, that there were some folks that didn't get the basics of audio, building blocks, because they were afraid to ask a question in class because they thought it might sound dumb. Or maybe it's a thing that you've always wondered, but you just can't find the answer on the internet, or on Gearsluts, or by asking your mentor. And it might be something that we know the answer to, or know someone who does. So you can ask your questions. This is the most important thing. completely anonymously, because I never want anybody to feel dumb for asking a dumb question. And I never want anyone to feel like we might, like if you ask that question, your identity might show up out there in the universe. And so, Dan, if you have a quick sec to share your screen and just let folks see exactly what we see. So we've just basically organized these questions that we get on the forum at tinystereo.com. And this is all we see.
I think it's shared right now. I'm not sure how to make it show up on the screen for everyone to see.
Carmen, can you show?
There you go.
So this is it. All we get is a timestamp, which is the date. We get the question itself, and then we get what the question pertains to in the little drop-down menu when you go to tinystereo.com.
And we don't even know who it's from.
And we do not know who it comes in from. That is literally, I set the forum originally to just show only those three things: the date it came in for organization, the question itself, and then the topic of the question. So that's it. So we can unshare that, and we should get started. Dan, what do you think?
Yeah. What do you think about starting? We could start like, so far we have mixing, mastering, and technical questions. So
all right, let's ask the group here what they want to know about. So if you want mixing, drop a 1. If you want mastering, drop a 2. And if you want technical questions, drop a 3.
And I don't know how long of a delay there is for that, but
we'll see him come in eventually, I think. But we could just get started with one question. And I'll ask first, Dan.
Mm-hmm.
And then you should maybe be the one to answer this. Hold on, where is it? I'm gonna ask a mixing question real quick.
Oh, good.
And then we're gonna take a look at what all these answers are here. Okay, advice for people that are working on another thing to pay the bills and wants to become music their full-time career. Have you ever been in that situation?
I was fortunate enough to not ever be in that situation. Right after college, I came to Nashville right after graduating and started an internship that lasted about 2 months. And I was able to survive off savings for that couple months before I got hired. But I do know a lot of people and have a lot of friends who do have to, they have some time where they're working a job and trying to do pro audio. And it's really difficult. I think the answer to that question too kind of depends on what you mean by pro audio. If you want to be an assistant at a major studio, that's something different than like working out of your home, but professionally, or even if you have a studio of your own, you can set your schedule much more regularly if you are working for yourself. If you work at a major studio, or like even just any studio that has a boss, you're kind of going to be at the mercy of that studio. There's not a lot of leeway and wiggle room in the music industry. People generally, especially in mastering, but all around, people run into deadlines. They need to get things submitted by a specific date to make sure it gets released on time. And it's kind of one of these old things that gets said in a lot of industries, but the first time you say no is the last time they ask you to do it. And that really is true. I found that to be pretty true in this industry specifically. So I would say your best bet is to try and have your second income be something that is flexible schedule-wise. I don't know how possible that's going to be. Really, the answer is it's difficult. It's just really hard to do that. But I would say try to find something that is possibly more flexible with hours. And if right now there's a lot of ways to make money doing audio, you could do like editing podcasts, editing YouTube, sound for YouTube videos. And there's so many people making content that there are opportunities out there for sure. And to get those opportunities, I'd say just start hitting people up. Let people know. I'm sure you'll have friends who are trying to do creative things with audio. Hit them up. But yeah, that's kind of my go-to answer for that.
Right on. I think that we're actually getting more questions in on the site. I'm sending them to you right now to put them in the forum. But
okay.
There's definitely a wide range of ways that people end up in the career path that they did. And like even if you've gone to school or in one specific topic, you might end up working full time and totally love it in another field. So I think we've all definitely been in a situation where it was kind of not that easy to pay the bills, but I would just suggest always like persevere, just work your ass off, and eventually you'll get there. I mean, that is not taking into account all of the, um, definite like socially unbalanced things that we have to deal with as a society today, or the fact that like we're in a pandemic right now, which is really, really difficult to deal with. But in general, the folks that are working today, it took them a very long time to get to where they're at, and it probably will for you too, but it's a very rewarding career and I wouldn't choose anything else. So keep on it. All right.
Totally agree.
I saw a lot of threes in there.
And threes was
a lot of twos and
technical,
threes.
wasn't it?
Technical stuff. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, should I ask you one of these technical questions, Piper?
Sure. Yeah. Give me an easy one because I don't know that much technical stuff.
Okay. So this one, I like this question. This is an interesting one. I think the path I want to head down is essentially audio gear repair. What would you recommend as the next step past the audio Lego kits of build your own clone, etc.? I looked at build your own clone. That's a company. Sorry, excuse me. What would be the next step past audio Lego kits of build your own clone? I looked at their amps and outboard effects, and the instructions alone scare me.
Woof. Well, that's kind of a hard one because there's definitely a lot of folks out there that are working at a very, very high level as audio gear repair people. The issue though is that they're really hard to find. And sometimes they're really hard to get a hold of. Like even us as gear owners that need audio stuff repaired, it's hard to get a hold of them. My number one bit of advice for anyone starting out something in a career that is possibly as abstract as audio gear repair person is to find someone in the field who's doing it at a high level and see if you can get them to mentor you or at least give you a few pieces of advice. I mean, there are signal processing books. Definitely going through some sort of a technical program, like even at a community college, would be really, really helpful for you to learn more about electronics and circuit diagrams and things like that. A lot of the folks that we know of that are working in audio gear repair now, like they used to take apart their parents' like ham radios and stuff and put them back together. And so that would, that's like the only path to career entry is like just starting to do it and learning everything there is to know about it. I would suggest finding someone who is doing it at a high level and getting them to mentor you. And I can probably think up a few folks. There's a lot of folks over here in Nashville, and I knew a couple over in the Bay Area, but depending on where this question came from, I think it's a lot of it's location based. Dan, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I just kind of echoing you. I would say step one is a really good electrical engineering background.
Yes.
Yeah, because even if you go work for someone who specifically builds audio gear, analog gear is all electrical engineering. That's all the box is made of, is electrical components. So knowing that and getting really good at soldering, practice. I would say start with the simplest kits out there and just keep building them and keep failing and trying again and again, and eventually you will get much better at it.
Right.
When I first started soldering, I just burned myself continually and had metal all over the table, and now I'm still really bad at it, but at least the mic cable works when it's done. So I would start with that electrical engineering, and make sure you like that, because that is the job. Like audio gear repair is not so much the creative aspect of like making music, it's all fixing electrical circuits.
Right. I think also like some of the best gear repair people and best gear designers as well, like even like our very good friend Ivana Manley, they understand how every single component changes the sound. And so doing a lot of research and understanding of how like what like what like a Varimu, why that sounds so good, it's definitely because of the components and the high level of the components. That has to do with the choices that they made in the design based on what components were available. And so a lot of gear repair nowadays is like, okay, can you even still get that spec of tube that's necessary? Or can you even get that specific cap? Like, you don't really know.
Right.
And so I feel like almost like a lot of like vintage gear repair people are like these wonderful dinosaurs that like can still somehow use like a library card catalog or something to find that one specific thing that you need. Um, and uh, and and so if those are the things that make them successful, then that's what you got to kind of do. So research what those components are and why they were part of the design, and then look into sourcing those components too.
Definitely.
Whew. All
Do
right.
you want?
How about one more technical one?
Sure. We have one more here. Do you want to ask it? Or do you want me to ask it?
I'm going to ask it
Okay.
of you. Okay. And we also still have a bunch of questions rolling in. This is awesome. I keep sending them to you.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry.
So, all right, here we go. This is a technical question. I've noticed that there seems to be a correlation between the loudness of a track and the potential for intersample peaks, particularly after the sample has been encoded for streaming. Are intersample peaks unavoidable even when using a true peak limiter?
I would be curious if the person who asked the question noticed the intersample peaks by hearing them, or if they have some sort of a meter that is running for all their audio that they play and they see that there are intersample peaks.
Hold on, Dan.
Sorry.
No, let's go back though for folks.
Okay.
What is an intersample peak?
Oh, so when the file that you submit to go to streaming or to whatever platform it's going to end up on, usually that streaming service is going to have to encode the file into some other format. Some sort of lossy format is the most common. There are some that don't. Amazon HD, for example, will do things at full PCM resolution or a full quality WAV file. But most of them, like Spotify and whatnot, they're going to need to encode your file into some other format. And when that happens, when it's crunching all the numbers in the bits and making that file much smaller and much more streamable, sometimes certain parts of the song that are louder you'll get little amplifications and little errors in the encoding that cause the audio to go to 0 dB full scale or higher, or in other words, above the maximum allowed. And that can cause some nasty sounds and some distortion sounds, some crunchiness. And that's basically what an intersample peak is, to my understanding. I don't think that, especially with today's encoders, they are so good. I don't particularly worry about this problem. My masters actually peak much louder than all the recommendations that you see on the websites. And I don't hear them when they happen, for the most part, when I'm working. I generally also do not like, a part of the question was true peak limiting. Is true peak limiting useful? I don't use it. I have found it to make everything sound really kind of strange. And I can't really describe, it's not the same on everything, but true peak limiting essentially is going to start like looking ahead at your file and trying to compensate and find the spots that will have these intersample peaks and fix them so they don't. But it really affects the impact of the track in my mind. And can make it feel like it'll feel disjointed sometimes. The top end will get a little wonky. So I literally don't use any true peak limiting, and all of my masters go to minus 0.2 dB full scale when I deliver them. And I haven't had any complaints yet about intersample peaks.
You are right on, Dan. Thank you for that. I'm
No
so
problem.
glad. I also forgot to, like, in our disclaimers of everything being super anonymous, I also forgot to say that we have one rule, that we do not say the words "it depends" in the answer.
Fair. I think that's fair. Did I say it depends?
No, you didn't. I'm just really proud of you for not doing that.
Perfect.
I don't really like the sound of peak limiting that much either. Especially true peak. And a lot of this I think has to do with with like the fact that there are, there's this like misnomer that stuff's just going to get rejected if it has a certain number of samples in a row that are peaking or clipping. And that's just not really a thing. I mean, yeah, you have to be responsible, but I think it's better to just avoid, try and avoid clipping if you can, and if you are going to, then just know what you're doing.
Mhm. And like you see this all the time on audio forums. People will say, "I have a master and it's at minus, whatever 10 LUFS. Is that too loud?" And someone will just say, like another mastering engineer will just say, "Well, how does it sound?" And
Mhm.
honestly, that's the answer. It's a really unsexy answer, but if it sounds good and you're not hearing anything, like it doesn't matter if the meters are red to me. That's part of its thing. It's part of what
What
makes
is
it sound cool.
what is clipping or intersample peaking? If you could hear it, what does that sound? Does it sound like the people walking around above my head?
Yeah, exactly.
What does that sound like to you?
To me, I hear like it's almost like when you're frying a hamburger on a grill and that
Mhm.
like sound, that will
Mhm.
happen just for like brief moments at loud parts. That's what I hear
Right.
intersample peaking as,
Mhm.
if I hear it at all.
Right. And I hear the peak limiter almost, you're exactly right. Like it just sort of changes it into something that it wasn't.
Mhm.
But I can tell when someone has relied on a peak limiter instead of relied on a different, style of dynamics processing in lieu of that, which usually
Yes.
results in better, a better sound that's more true to the material. Is like it almost feels um like it's like a little bit woolly, just the tiniest
Yeah.
bit on
Yes.
the really like higher frequency stuff. It just feels like a little bit more dull, or like I don't have my contacts in. I'm just sort of like
Yep.
looking around the room and I can't really see anything, but just for those quick moments.
Yep, and the thing is those I don't know if this is true, but to me, I feel like I only hear it in high frequencies when there's
Yep.
intersample peak problems, and
Mhm.
so if it's going to fix those, what it's going to be doing is reducing the top end most likely.
Yep.
So that's exactly right. It feels almost like someone took a sheet and put it over your speakers to me, and
Yep.
like a lot of that super nice high, ultrasonic stuff is not getting through.
Exactly. Should we move on to another one?
Sure.
All right.
Um, did we get any new technical ones, or should we move on to maybe we should move on to something else?
Yeah.
What's the next most asked for? It looks like two, maybe mixing.
That'd be
Oh,
mastering.
two is mastering. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Um,
Which I think we both know a little bit about. We don't have to probably say it depends.
well, I'm still faking it and making it so far, so we're good. Um, well, there's another one. This one here. Let's see.
Bobby, yes, even for streaming. Yes.
Let's try this one. It's a little bit of a longer question, but I like this one. It's an interesting one, especially in today's new way with a lot of new technology we have for music. With the increasing ubiquity and decreasing prices of mastering plugins, why shouldn't mix engineers be trying to master their own mixes in an effort to make them sound as finished as possible? Do you think the mastering engineer's job comes down to better perception and hearing and a different skill set? Or is it really more about getting another perspective and a set of trained ears on a mix? Yeah, why not master your own mixes, Piper?
Well, part of what we do as mastering engineers is not just make something feel more finished or more done, or louder or more polished. Most of our job, Dan, and you can jump in anytime if you have something to add, but most of our job is about quality control and about taking one format and creating another format that is actually listenable and releasable with it. And lastly, if you are going to work with a human mastering engineer, then they are probably going to be helping you out of the creative record making process and into and through the technical manufacturing process, which could be your release plan. It could be making vinyl. It could be making CDs. It could be uploading to Bandcamp. Most people need help with any one of those things, and we're here to help with that. When it comes to why a mixing engineer should or shouldn't master their own mixes, honestly, it comes down to the budget. To be fair, I mean, if I cost more than a set of mastering plugins and consistently you can justify that, and you can't hear the difference of what I do versus what the plugins do, then I should probably just hang my hat up and go go like make cheeseburgers for a living. But I just I believe that, you know, that process of format conversion and understanding what the difference is between a set of digital files and what vinyl sounds like and needs to sound like to release, or taking a recording on tape and getting it ready to go onto CDs, for instance. The translation of sound between those formats is extremely important. That's a massive part of our job. But more importantly, it's about quality control and making sure that the record is going to sound exactly as it should out in the real world. And that's what we work on every day. I don't mix records. Dan, I don't think mixes records anymore.
I do not.
This is our craft. This is what we do. And this is what we love doing. And most modern production of records, even all the way back through history of record production, requires a team of people. Most of them require a team of people to be successful in the project. The justification for using a human instead of a plugin or a robot mastering, for instance, is just simply that, yes, it's another set of ears. It's someone to call out. You know, your plugin's not going to call out and tell you like, hey, maybe you ought to back off that drum bus a little bit because it's like totally tying my hands on getting some proper program dynamics out of your mix here. Or, hey, you know, I know you really, really, really like 2K, but I don't think your listeners are going to really, really, really like 2K. You know, things like that. That is my the shortest answer I can give you and address all of these questions here. Dan, have you got anything else to add?
Yeah, the only other thing I would add is that you know, you are going to be sending it to a different room if another mastering engineer is doing it. If you're doing it all on your own, you're probably using the same speakers and the same monitoring environment as you mixed the record. And it's always good to give it another, you know, someone else with a different professional setup in their own space, give it a same listen and make sure that everything is sounding the way that it should. And also, you know, as the mix engineer, I feel like the mastering stage, when mix engineers do it, they think of it as like an extension of mixing. Like it's a skill that's very similar to mixing, but mastering engineers, like, this is all we do is listen and work on complete mixes. We are never adjusting kick drums and snare drums individually. So we just have much more practice at that skill set. And are much faster when something is when there is a problem. We know where to go for that problem, what tool to use for that problem, because we do that every day. Right. And the last thing is just, of course, you tend to get, and I would do this too as a mix engineer, you just get too close to whatever it is you're working on, and you are hearing things like what you hear is literally not what everybody else hears. Your brain is doing all of this compensation for the way you've been mixing it, and you know, like a lot of times I'll say to like a friend or something, oh, do you hear that awesome, like whatever in the mix? And they literally don't even hear the thing, right? But I'm so fixated on it as a mix engineer that like I hear it. I think that is just another perspective is the right answer there for me personally as to why I'd say not to master your own things.
Right on. Should we ask one more mastering question?
Sure.
All right.
Excuse me.
Let's see. Okay, I'm going to ask this one for you, Dan.
Okay.
Okay, mastering. How do you approach the first time listening through a track that you are mastering?
Yeah. The very first thing that I always do, it's always the same. I put the mix in my DAW. This is assuming that it's the first song of a project. So I haven't already mastered half of a record and I'm starting a new song. It's slightly different. So this
maybe
is
a single, like
a
maybe
single,
this is a single.
Right. The first thing I do is listen to the song on my with my setup, but with absolutely nothing happening. So I want to hear exactly what the mix is before I ever turn a knob. And if the mix engineer has provided a heated reference, which we get sometimes, so what will happen is mix engineers will mix the song and then they'll do some sort of like, you know, put a L2 or an ozone limiter on the end so that the client hears the mix loud when they approve it. That just helps clients understand how their mix translates compared to other things that are already released. So if a mix engineer gives me that, I actually listen to that one first before even listening to the quieter mix. I listen to the heated reference to get my brain going where the client was. Like, what did the client listen to and approve? And that's really important, because a lot of times you might get something that it's like say it's a rock mix, and you say to yourself, there's too much bass guitar. But what you didn't know is that the client really wanted a lot of bass guitar in this mix, and their heated reference that's approved has a lot of low end. So oh, okay, we're going for that vibe when I master this song. Obviously, if there's a problem, we're going to fix it. But I think that listening to the song once and trying to put yourself into the artist's shoes and say, like, what are they trying to tell me with this song and this mix? And then is the mix getting there? And from that stage, now we can start adjusting the mix to be what we think the final master should be.
Right on. I have nothing to add.
Awesome.
Other than that, when you listen to the mix or the master, just make sure you're volume matching.
Oh yeah, that too. Definitely. Yeah.
Wow. Good answer, Dan.
Thanks.
Excellent. Nice.
Thanks.
All right. Who's having fun? Drop a 1 if you're having a good time. We're about halfway through here, so let's keep on rolling here.
Sure. We haven't gotten into mixing
We
yet.
haven't. Should we hit a couple of these mixing questions, and then maybe let's pick 1 or 2 that have come in
Sure.
just this evening.
Absolutely.
All right. Oh gosh, yay, look, everybody's having fun.
Oh,
that's the goal.
Let's say
I threw one out there that's like kind of quick.
Did you, the one you highlighted here?
Yeah.
Piper, what is the best method for sourcing high quality reference tracks for mixing?
Well, I think that this is a little bit controversial. I don't know. Maybe you'll think differently. I don't know. I kind of feel like the best quality reference tracks for mixing are other mixes. And finding an engineer that you know and trust that could share a few good quality mixes of a genre that you're working on, with the artist's permission, of course, is the best way to get good reference material for mixing. I think that what happens a lot of times is, like, we work with engineers that are trying to mix a record. Let's just say mix a rock record to their favorite rock record that they know and love, that they can listen to on streaming or on CD or whatever, right? And they have this band and they want to sound like that. Well, the problem is that they're going to mix that into a state that we can't really work with, because if you mix a mix to sound like a master, it won't be malleable enough for us to put that mix in with other mixes that maybe other people have done on that record. So don't be that guy or gal that creates like the one outlier mix in the entire rest of the album of like 3 or 4 other mixers that we can't do anything with. So then we kind of are forced to master the whole rest of the album like that. But
are you specifically meaning because of volume is the reason, or what about
volume,
mixing like a mastered one will not work?
Thanks, Dan. Okay. It's partially volume, but all the things that you do in a mix to make it into a mastered level are just going to destroy the mix. So like when we get a mix that is a responsible level and a responsibly mixed record by like any of the badass mixing engineers we get to call our clients every day, it will generally be definitely quieter than a master or the releasable master. It will generally have a few other things going on. Like, one, the snare drum might feel a little bit hotter. The vocal might feel a little bit hotter. Some of these little elements of stuff that have to sit in the right place when it's mastered, they might feel up just a hair, because when it goes through our mastering chain and our dynamics, those things are going to get kind of tamed down just a little bit to sit right in the right pocket. Also, it's not going to be super bright. because when we go through heavy dynamics processing and limiting, what ends up happening is that EQ curve just starts to shift up in the top end. And so if you already have a thing that is flat, like you mix it through a real-time analyzer or something, or some sort of spectrum analyzer set, all of the frequencies are super flat. What ends up happening is we have to start toning that down in order to do any dynamics processing to it, because a byproduct of a lot of limiting processes is that it ends up feeling brighter than where you started. Lastly, our ears don't hear stuff like a flat RTA. It like grinds my gears when people say that they're mixing into a spectrum analyzer, that like they're like it's a super flat mix. That's not how we hear stuff.
That's
Like,
going to be
we
a
hear stuff
harsh
with like
sounding
a
mix.
little bit of level in the like upper mid, low, like the mids and upper mids. We hear a little bit of a bump in the low end. And then stuff just sort of falls right off other than that. And that's kind of what we're looking for when we have a mix. So the problem is that if we are presented with a thing that is, mixed to sound like a master, then we really can't do much with it other than, either request a remix or just sort of pass it on through and do our best with it. Yeah. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, I don't. I would say too, just a lot of practice, and that, I mean, it's an obvious answer, but it's really true, is do your mix. And if you can do some sort of quick master yourself, I don't know exactly how, much versatility you have as far as having a real mastering engineer do it, but just for fun, do what Piper said, put a limiter on and make it louder, and you'll hear the difference. You'll hear that like the upper mids will come up in volume and the low end will start to get a little bit flatter. And you'll start to see sort of what will happen when a mastering engineer gets it. So practice that, like do a mix and then add the limiter and see what you think. And see what changes. And if you want to go back to the mix, then go back to the mix.
Right.
But a lot of A/Bing and listening.
Yeah.
As far as high quality reference files, yeah, it would definitely be best to get mixes from other mix engineers. But in a world that's tough to do, so I would say mostly practice, then get it up to a level that feels about right with release things, and compare there and see how you do, and then go back to your mix to adjust. Don't adjust your mastering to make it sound like something else. Go back to your mix and practice, like, where do I need to put that snare drum to make it fit right? Where do I need to put the vocal to make it fit right? That's
Dan, it's like exactly right way of doing that, and that's kind of how I was able to teach myself to mix. Nowadays I can't mix my way out of a paper bag.
Oh, me neither.
But I definitely resonate with that, like try it again, try it again. When we're talking about reference tracks for just in general, though, I do think it's important to note that there are online resources for high quality reference tracks like HD Tracks, Blue Coast. I personally think that iTunes sounds a lot like my masters, much more so than Spotify or some of the other streaming services. But I think that when you are beginning a career in audio, you have to be listening to as high quality masters as you can find, because then you know what the goal is, at least. Like this step just before the master of knowing when to stop with your mix, that's a really, really hard task to learn.
Definitely.
It's a hard skill to learn. It just takes a really long time.
Absolutely.
All right. What should we hit next? How about a career one?
A career one. I have a really good technical one I do want to come back to, by the way, too.
Oh, okay. Hit the technical one.
I
I got some more. Hold on. I have to send them your way, too.
Oh, no worries. Only because this one is going to help everybody who has audio gear they don't want to ruin. And this is something I didn't learn until I was working at a professional studio. But question is, could you talk about the power up and power down sequencing of your gear? I only have a small setup of an interface and monitors, but I'm never 100% sure which to turn on first. Are there any general rules of thumb?
Ooh, okay. All right. You want me to hit this one and you fill in the blanks?
Totally.
All right. So power up and power down. First of all, you turn everything on at exactly the same time. And Dan didn't even stop me.
Sorry, I just got a random text at the same time. Sorry. Yes, do not turn everything on at the same time.
Don't turn on everything at the same time, for the love of God. No, what I do is I usually turn on the gear, and I've turned first the interface on, then the computer, and then the gear, and then the speakers. Actually, I used to call it hits. What was it? I can't remember how. Maybe it was shit. Maybe that was my acronym. Maybe not hit. I have to remember when I used to teach this exact thing. I came up with like this really special acronym. All right. So it's always, you turn your speakers on last and off first, because otherwise you're going to end up with a pop through the system when you turn this, when you turn the console off, you're going to pop the speakers, and it's not necessarily like going to destroy them, but it's not good for them.
Mm-hmm.
But really, like if you have a console, for instance, that may have a microphone plugged into it, and you maybe have phantom power on it and stuff, there's like other things that you need to keep in mind that you don't necessarily want to send a spike through the system. So my first thing is always turn the interface on first so that it can like kind of get warmed up, then turn the computer on, and then the console, and then the speakers.
Exactly. Yep. Definitely amps or speakers, are the last ones on and the first ones off, because the only thing that can really get destroyed from a pop or a signal that goes through are those. So I would say that's definitely true. I
have one to adjust. I have to amend this statement. You want to turn the lights on first so you don't trip over shit on the way to the console.
That's fair. That is definitely true.
All right. Man. What else we got? Why don't you ask another one?
Well, you said you had a career. Did you have a career one, or do you want me to find a career? It is your turn.
Well, I wanted to ask you this one. I mean, maybe you and I don't necessarily have a lot of experience with this exactly, but we probably know lots of people who do have made the switch.
Yes.
But career question is, what is your advice to someone who has multiple years of experience in live sound who wants to switch to studio work?
Man, I wish Vance Powell was here for.
I know.
Maybe
we gotta get Vance on here.
Yeah, we do. He'd be great.
We'd have to bleep him out. Like we'd have to actually like hold up a black bar and like censor him.
Oh, that's so true. This is an interesting one. I've never worked in live sound, so I'm not exactly sure that I'll give the best answer. But I think for the most part, a lot of the skills that you have are going to translate pretty well if you're a mix engineer or if you're doing the setup part of a live setup. A lot of that stuff is still the same. It's all about signal flow, and it's all about gain structure. So you'll already probably have some of that knowledge. What I would look into is start looking at more things like small room acoustics, room treatments, make sure that your listening environment is correct. Because unlike a live setup where you go and you have to make good sound in a said space, now you can change your space to help with your sound. So definitely learning a little bit about room acoustics, and then also listening. I assume that if it's a larger live gig, it was probably a pretty loud environment that you were in all the time. And I wouldn't try and translate that at the same kind of levels when you first start working, only because it's going to really hurt your ears over time. And in general, most people aren't going to be listening to recordings at 110 decibels. So get used to that normal, like 80 to 90 sort of max range of listening, and really familiarize yourself with what that sounds like, because your brain too, if you're in a live setup, is going to be listening to a lot of super sub frequencies, a lot more low end that you can feel more than hear.
Right.
And that's just not quite what it's like in the recording environment. So honestly, listening a whole bunch is great. But most of the skills you have as far as your general getting started are going to translate really well. Right. Now, if it's a career thing of like, how do we get into it? Use those contacts you've built through the live gig. I'm sure you have lots of clients that you've worked with. hit them up, say, hey, I'm moving into the studio world, come on over, like let's cut a vocal and like see what you think, you know, like and just get yourself out there working, just actually do a bunch of work is probably the best way to do it.
Yeah, and if you're going to go work for a studio or something, you know, highlight the skills that you had when you were doing live sound. You're able to think on your feet. You're a problem solver. You're really good with people, probably. You're good at working with a team. You've been to all of these different places, maybe on tour, and you know where the best place to get a cappuccino is in like France or something. I think that any way that you can highlight some of the things that you learned as a live sound engineer are definitely going to help you in the studio. And I actually really loved when I was doing a lot, like making a lot of like records, like recording and mixing. I loved working with former live sound engineers. The reason is because they could easily listen with their ears and get a really good sound really quickly, rather than people that came up in a studio that just tweaked till the cows come home and just like go, you know, just like take forever. Working with a live sound engineer or working with an assistant, for instance, that had a live sound experience, like things just went so much faster and were so much more smooth. So you know, highlight those things. And so if you're you know, you're looking to switch over, definitely learn what a record sounds like in a room or in a studio rather than what it sounds like on, you know, from 40 feet back at front of house. But otherwise you're like in a really good place to excel in a studio environment.
Absolutely.
And you
And
probably won't get beer thrown on you. Maybe you will.
and definitely like protect your ears, because odds are they've been going through a lot if you worked full time as a live engineer. So honestly, like try to be careful. Try to not listen to normal things. Like if you're out and just listening to music on your own, you know, keep your car stereo a little quieter. All that stuff is going to help you help protect those things, because once you lose hearing, it is impossible to gain it back.
Right. Should we move on to mixing?
Absolutely.
Because this one calls you out.
Oh, it does call me out.
Yeah.
Oh man. Should
All
I
right.
ask it to you though, or do you want to ask it to me?
No, I'm asking you.
Okay.
I want you to explain this.
Oh, I'm in trouble.
I'll help you. Okay. I remember Dan saying he generally sticks to all or nothing LCR panning, but if you're using panning to position a sound in the mix, do you recommend a different method for placing sounds? Like if I have a snare panned at minus 64L, can you go to minus 64L? I guess it depends on the DAW.
Mine
And
goes to 0 to 100,
and
yeah.
plus 5R for placement. Am I still at risk for phase issues in mono, or does that only come into place with equal pan values on both channels? Okay, this is not necessarily a mixing question. This is more of a technical phase question.
It's a little bit technical. So the answer is it depends on, it doesn't, it depend, but it depends on where in the mix it is will determine how much phase issues it has. So if you imagine this, if something is entirely left and right, for all the way left and all the way right, and they're opposite waveforms, meaning that if I sum them together, they will cancel out into nothing. Okay, if that's the case, it will cancel completely when those are summed to mono. Now, if I have one at sort of like let's say the 5R and one at 64 left, it still does the same math. And what you're going to end up with is something in the center that kind of looks like this. One side of the signal is going to be a little bit louder, but you're still going to get phasey weirdness. And as you adjust that panning, the cancellation is kind of going to like, I know this doesn't, sorry, this is like such a bad example with the hands, but like, if you think of like, this means they're out of phase, as you pan it, it's sort of going to go like a little left or a little bit right, but it's always going to have those phase issues.
So let's hold on. Let's go back for one quick second.
Sure.
Dan, can you explain to me what panning means? Like when I turn the knob left and right, like how does the computer know that I'm sending the sound to the left and to the right?
Yeah, that's actually a good question. As far as super technically, I'm not exactly sure, but when a sound comes out of both speakers, if your room is set up correctly, it will feel like it's in the center. If you have the same signal coming out of your left and your right identically, your brain is going to perceive that as being right down the center.
Right.
And as you pan something, it's increasing the amplitude on one speaker and decreasing it on the other. So
it's like a level control. Like when I turn the pan knob to the left, that means I'm sending more signal to whatever the channel 1 output is.
correct.
And then when I turn the pan knob to the right, it's sending more signal to whatever the channel 2 output pan is.
Yeah, more than the left. Yes.
More than the left.
Correct.
Yes.
It's not really amplifying the signal. And in fact, this might be a little too far down the road, but if you've ever seen pan depth in your DAW, that is what that means is when you have a physical sound coming out of the left and right the same, okay, let me start that over. Let's say we had one sound and we played it out of the left speaker only, and it's 70 decibels. If I played out of the left only, it's 70. And if I played out of the right only, it's 70. But if I played out of both, it's 73. Right. And the reason is every time you double the power of sound in the real world, it will amplify the signal by 3 decibels. So if I had one trombone playing and then I added a second playing the same thing, it doesn't get twice as loud. It gets 3 decibels louder.
Which is kind of half as loud.
Which is kind of, yeah, right. So what pan depth does is as you turn that knob to the right or the left, it actually does slowly increase the level a little bit so that it sounds the same volume as when it's in the center. Because if you didn't have this, it would always sound 3 decibels louder in the center.
Right.
That's the way that panning basically works. Is it's an attempt to send more signal to the left or the right and make your brain perceive the sound as coming from a specific spot out of that.
Yamaha, right? Am I right? Is that the Yamaha pan law? I can't remember exactly.
The 3 dB one?
Yeah.
I see it in Pro Tools, actually. I have it at 3 in there. But
there's a specific, I have to go back and I have to pull up the book. I have it upstairs, but there are, Bobby here is asking about our favorite pan laws, and Yamaha is one that I might be wrong, but I think that's the one that does the compensation for the 3 dB thing.
Interesting. Yeah, I actually don't know technically what those specific laws are, to be honest.
I will tell you sometime about my experience diving into pan laws, and it actually harkens back to a long time ago mentor of mine, who is John Dunkerley. He is one of the original Decca engineers. He was one of the originators of the Decca tree.
Cool.
And he is the one that told me that no matter what you do, 3M50s with Yamaha pan law is the only way to create a Decca tree with very specific dimensions of it.
Yeah.
And so I was like, what is Yamaha pan law? What does that mean? I never knew anything about it. And he sent me these Xeroxed, not even scanned or photocopied, but old school Xeroxed pages of Yamaha pan laws based on a certain amplitude, what the compensation was at a certain percentage of left or right, what the compensation was. It was crazy.
That's interesting. Huh.
He's a really awesome, tiny little British man
who knows a lot about phase relationships.
So much. So much. It's so awesome. He's probably forgotten more than you and I will ever know.
I hate those people. No, they're my favorite. Yeah, that's really cool.
Should we do 1 or 2 more maybe?
Sure.
And then it looks like our hour is coming to a close pretty soon here. What do you want to? Have you put any more into this list that we just got?
I didn't, just to keep the clicking sounds out of everyone's headphones, but I'm going to add them. I've just been looking at the emails here.
Let's throw one. Let's do one in that came from just I'm just going to choose it randomly.
Okay, go for it.
All right. This is totally random. I just picked it out of my email here. Super random technical question. When does it make sense to record 32-bit audio files since most converters are 24-bit? Is the only benefit when working in the box with plugins?
This is an interesting one that I I have to admit I'm not the best at understanding 32-bit yet. 32-bit is basically what that means is that there's more information available in the file for volume information than 24 bits or than 16 bits.
Right.
And that gives you just better resolution, especially at quieter volumes, of just more accurate representation of the volume. It's essentially like a super HD file, if you want to think of it that way. And there are some weird things with 32-bit, and I don't really understand the whole floating point thing to the point where I can like tell you about it, but it essentially lets you get more, it lets you get a lot more values in the file for volume. A lot more, oh, I hear myself all of a sudden. A lot more like options for, sorry, got all distracted there. It gives you a lot more data points in the file for volume. A lot more information can be stored. Now, the problem with using 32-bit files is converters, for the most part, there are a couple of new ones that can actually do 32-bit things, but for the most part, they all work at 24. And 32-bit files have the ability to go above 0 dB full scale, and without losing any resolution, which is really cool. And that's why they're very useful with plugins and working in your DAW, because as you're using files that are 32-bit there, you get extra headroom in your DAW where you won't hear distortion and clipping, even though your file is going above 0 dB full scale on your meters.
Right.
The downside of this, and we personally do not ever deliver 32-bit masters because they can be played back incorrectly. They can go above 0, and that will cause distortion when you convert that file to an AAC or something else. If you do it the wrong way, you can end up actually clipping your file a lot. Also, 24-bit is an insane amount of dynamic range, and you really don't need any more for the file that you're listening to. You're not getting an advantage in quality to your ears by listening to a 32-bit file. The real magic, in my opinion, is in being able to process the file and with much more dynamic range in your DAW. How'd I do?
You did great. I am going to throw out something that I know that you might know a little bit about. That is going to be a fun historical fact for those listening. Just the same as how a 32-bit can allow you to, 32-bit float can allow you to go up above 0 dB full scale technically. Sort of technically.
Yeah, like
as you explained. Do you remember on your Pacific Microsonics?
Yes.
Your HDCD encoding?
I do know about HDCD encoding.
So this is where Dan and I have like all these random ass like weird little career like synchronicities, and our love of the Pacific Microsonics HDCD. I had a couple of Model 2s that I worked on a lot when I was first getting my career started, and I know you had a Model 2. And so this is gonna blow your minds. You ready, guys? So before we had like regular like 24-bit digital files that were releasable, there was this format called HDCD, which was a 16-bit CD, but and correct me if I'm wrong exactly, Dan, but in the 16th bit, they folded up another 8 bits. So you could get more dynamic range out of playing back an HDCD encoded file on an HDCD decoder player. You could get a full 24-bit of dynamic range. So as we know, 16-bit has 96 dB of dynamic range, 24-bit has 144 dB of dynamic range. That's what I understood about it, and I never really spent a lot of time with it, but I thought it was super cool.
I actually think that it was 20-bit.
20 bits.
I might be wrong.
Sorry.
I think it gives you 20 bits.
You might. I think you're right.
And the way that worked is kind of wild. Basically, your CD player would have the ability to read an HD CD and then lower the volume. Like you will actually hear the volume decrease by 4 or 6 dB, and you'll get the extra headroom from the disc. And it's bizarre. It works, and it still lives in a 16-bit file that's the same size as any 16-bit file. It's wild. We used to, at the studio I worked at before, we encoded everything HDCD, but without the volume adjustment. So technically they were HDCDs that didn't have the extra bits. But it's cool because if you have an HDCD player, the little light would come on and it would like still know that it's an HDCD. It's a dead format now, unfortunately. I don't think that anyone is like releasing or making HDCDs anymore, but it was a really cool idea and it worked. It was just too expensive for anyone to put into practice, really. But
Loic, if we're over time, feel free to jump in and stop us. But I was gonna say, like, Dan, maybe we should tell them about one last little bit of audio information from when we first, probably both of us, were starting our careers. Back when we would have to make Zinman loop CDs.
I don't know what that is.
You didn't ever have to make a Zinman loop? Okay, so back before we had regular like Sericon or even Isotope, like easy dithering along with a sample rate converter, or even the ability to literally export a 16-bit file easily out of our DAW, we would play back the 24-bit master just through the converter chain and record in a new 16-bit record with the PQ flags for the DDP.
Yep, we did actually the same thing. We just didn't call it that.
So it was invented by this dude named Paul Zinman, and like look him up. He's
interesting.
Awesome, totally crazy.
Interesting. Yeah, that was the process of the last studio I did too. For getting, I think they still do that. For getting from 24 to 16 is using that loop through the converter to get the dither and all of the info. And the Pacific Microsonics can also sample rate convert in real time too, which is cool.
It can.
But yes, that is that we just called it loading back. But yes, that is exactly right.
Yeah.
That's
all right.
awesome.
Loic, you wanna take us home here? I can't hear you.
Sorry, I was on Laserdisc.
I can hear you
now. That's a fun format too.
Someone was asking. It sounded like the Laserdisc format, adding 8 bits to 24 bit or whatever you were talking about. Well, thank you. How many more questions do we? How many questions have we not? And you haven't.
So
answered?
many.
I mean, we probably have like 7, maybe 10 now. Oh my gosh, more than that. We have like 12 questions we didn't even get to.
A lot of questions that just came in. I grabbed a couple of them from this from these emails as they came in. But
okay, so hey. So what we're going to do is we're going to wrap up because this was for now. And I want to jump into the community, but I wanted to thank you both for doing this. And we have questions ready for Thursday, the March 4th, which you see at the bottom here. Boom, March 4th, 6 p.m. And we're looking forward to continue this conversation in a month. But Dan and Piper, thank you so much for doing this. Usual question: if everybody enjoyed the session today, drop a 2 for Dan and Piper. I see. Thank you from Rebecca. Thank you.
Awesome.
Santiago, thanking you.
Santiago.
This is great. We're very excited. This is and as you've noticed, guys, we've kind of changed the layout. This is all new for us, so we're excited. So I think we have a banner at the bottom, but as I mentioned, Dan and Piper will be back March 4th. Next week, we will have our first mixing critic session with Frank Sakro and a guest. Same hour, same location. It will be on YouTube. But what we would love you, all of you, if you don't do it yet, if you haven't done it yet, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Fun fact: I gave ourselves we had 150 followers or subscribers in December, and I gave ourselves the objective to reach 1,000 YouTube subscribers. And actually, I think we are 925 right now.
Wow!
So we'll probably reach 1,000 very quickly. So that's really exciting. So join us if you. Maybe we can drop the link somewhere. If you go to musicexpo.co, you will see basically the link to register to Frank's session. Once you register, you will get the link to how and the instructions on how to submit your mix for review. And the deadline will be the 10th. So make sure you perfect. I love it. So make sure you sign up. And closing statement, Dan, Piper.
Well, thank you for having us on, Loic. This has been fantastic. I really enjoy this a lot. So can't wait till next time. And thank you very much, Piper.
Right on. What Dan said. It depends.
It depends.
All right. So everybody, you must have an email that includes the link to this session, but also to the Discord. We're going to jump into the Discord and go into the community hangout. And it's frankly, I think the first time I'm going to do it. So we're going to see how it's going to look like. So everyone who has attended is welcome to join us. We're going to hang there for about 20 minutes. Make sure you follow us on social media, Twitter and Instagram, the social media of choice for Music Expo at Music Expo SF. And of course, make sure you follow Dan on IG and Piper on IG or Twitter. And on this, thank you, everyone. And we see you next week. Bye.
Awesome.
Thanks, Loic.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in.